Zadok was just a little guy, never very big, and certainly not very strong. When he was about 6 years old, he contracted some kind of an illness that caused his legs to draw up until his knees almost touched his chest. From that day on, he couldn't straighten his legs until one day his father picked him up, sat him down in a chair, and offered him a new copper, or in other words, a penny, if he would let one foot hang down. Zadok remembered, quote, "It was very painful, but for so much money and to please Father, I tried it. And after a long, slow, and painful move, I did it. I was now praised for such a manly effort and offered another copper if I would let the other down. It was slow and painful, but I finally succeeded. From that time on, I gained very fast," he said. Well, Zadok and his family were baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and in 1837 decided to immigrate to Kirtland, Ohio, to join the saints there. It was a long journey from Canada to Ohio, and Zadok was forced to walk. He described the ordeal of gathering this way: "It all went well with the company except the cold weather. But with me, it was too much walking. I drove cows. My stiff legs and weak ankles could not stand it. In 4 or 5 days, we arrived at the St. Lawrence River, and I was badly used up." That means he was worn out. "I was obliged to ride the rest of the way, and it was several days after we arrived at the place of destination before I could stand up on my feet." End of quote. Later on, Zadok's family decided that he needed, in his crippled condition, to learn a trade. He recorded, "Being small and puny, the tailor's trade the most suitable for me." Well, it would seem that Zadok's own description that he may have been considered small, weak, and crippled. Yet, it would be this same crippled, puny, weak lad at the age of 17, in June of 1846, volunteered to march with the Mormon Battalion. Now, if you remember, that march was one of the longest infantry marches in U.S. military history, all the way from the Missouri River down to Santa Fe, into Mexico, and from there on into California across the Imperial Desert to San Diego, and then up to Los Angeles, and then after being released, to walk home. And Zadok said, "I walked it all the way." Zadok Knapp Judd marched that entire distance and back, and from there stayed a determined course of faith all the way into honored history. He walked his way into history. He helped settle Parowan, Utah, St. George, Utah, and finally Kanab. He later told the following story about getting out the logs to build his first cabin in Parowan. Quote, "I used to take my oxen and wagon, cut down a large tree and cut off a log 12 to 14 feet long, which would make 250 or 300 feet of lumber, load it onto my wagon, and drive it back down to town where our sawmill was located. Unload the log by tipping the wagon over without any other help but that of the oxen. When I looked back at that time now, it seems almost a mystery to me how it was done. But it was accomplished then without any trouble or fear of danger. In this way, I got out all the lumber I needed for building my house." A puny, weak, crippled lad, he grew into quite a man. He was one of the battalion boys who learned that the only limitations placed on us are the ones we place on ourselves. All things are possible to the faithful. This book, I am honored to present it to you. We wrote this with Michael Landon and Brandon Metcalf. We produced this book several years ago, a succinct history to tell the story of the Mormon Battalion. There were 500 men and boys and a few women who enlisted in the United States Army in the summer of 1846 and marched, as I said, all the way from the Missouri River, Council Bluffs, clear to California and then back as part of regular Army service. Theirs is a story that is remarkable for faith, courage, sacrifice, and just plain gritty endurance. I never knew this at the time when we were producing this book, just how significant the battalion boys would be. They changed the face of the American West. They were the first Latter-day Saints to arrive in the American West. They were the ones who were used to colonize throughout the American West. They were Brigham Young's right-hand men, and some of them went on to accomplish great things, Zadok being one of them. Little did I know when we wrote this book that I had an ancestor who marched with the battalion. He was one of those 500. His name was John Cox. Now, my dear friends, it's Christmas time. This book is finally available. It's been out of print for a long time. It's finally available. It's at historyofthesaints.org. If there's someone in your family, perhaps a young man or perhaps an older fellow, who would enjoy reading a story of courage and of endurance and of faith and sacrifice, a happy, positive story about overcoming obstacles, this is that story. It's available for Christmas. You can get it at historyofthesaints.org or at Deseret Book.